Okay, so, the block is talking. And what they're saying about Papoose is not a whisper anymore, sis. It's a full-blown scream that has been echoing through every barbershop, every group chat, every hip-hop podcast, and every corner of Black X for weeks now. Sources are alleging that the man everybody used to call the humble Papoose, the loyal Papoose, the ride-or-die husband who supposedly moved mountains for Remy Ma, was quietly running a completely different playbook the entire time. And that playbook allegedly had another woman's name written all over it in permanent ink. And what allegedly cracked the whole thing open, boo, is that Claressa Shields, the boxer, the two-time Olympic gold medalist, the woman Papoose supposedly ran to for salvation after Remy Ma broke his heart, was already in the picture long before Papoose ever pretended to be blindsided on that fumigated couch. Long before. Long enough that the culture is now doing forensic timeline math and coming up with numbers Papoose does not want anybody counting. And that's exactly why the internet is now saying Papoose didn't leave Remy Ma because Remy Ma broke his heart. Papoose left Remy Ma because Papoose had already been building a whole side kingdom, and Papoose needed a clean exit story to sell to the culture before the receipts landed on the wrong timeline. Allegedly, boo, allegedly. Look, I know some of y'all been screaming this since the day Papoose sat on that fumigated couch and started spilling for an hour straight. I saw the comments. I saw the tweets. I saw the group chats. I saw the reels, the TikToks, the barbershop live streams, and the podcast reactions. Y'all clocked Papoose in real time. Y'all clocked Papoose while he was still on the couch. Y'all clocked Papoose faster than his own microphone could catch up to what he was saying. But now that Big Keys has cracked open his forensic Papoose file series over at Keys News Network and Remy Ma is subtweeting Papoose in actual song lyrics that entire hip-hop journalists are decoding line by line. And Claressa Shields is showing up at the 2026 BET Awards holding Papoose's hand like she just won a heavyweight belt. Chile, the case against Papoose is basically prosecuting itself. Papoose does not need an opposing counsel. Papoose has been his own worst witness for the last 12 months, and the culture has been taking notes the entire time. Peep this. Because the phrase "he been talking to her" has quietly become street code for "this man was cheating" with a whole receipt trail attached. People are now saying Papoose's entire couch confession wasn't him venting at all. It was Papoose staging a public alibi. It was Papoose trying to control the narrative before the narrative controlled Papoose. The block is whispering that every single tearful line Papoose delivered about Remy Ma cheating, about Remy Ma being miserable, about Remy Ma weaponizing his daughter, about Remy Ma keeping him from his own child. Every single one of those lines was Papoose reverse engineering a reason to already be gone. And when you rewatch that live stream through that lens, sugar, the whole thing plays like a courtroom opening statement disguised as a heartbreak monologue. Papoose wasn't confessing. Papoose was pre-litigating. Papoose was building a jury before anybody had even filed charges. Alright, so, let's actually walk through this Papoose situation the way it deserves, because it's messier than people realize and the surface level takes on gossip Twitter are missing at least 4 layers of subtext. First, you have to understand who Papoose was in the culture before all this smoke started to rise. Papoose was branded as one of the last true street corner lyricists, Brooklyn to the bone, mixtape era royalty, the guy who allegedly wrote for Remy Ma, protected Remy Ma, visited Remy Ma every single day of her 6-year prison bid, brought Remy Ma food, held down Remy Ma's business affairs, and married Remy Ma in a jail wedding that the culture literally still cries about when the anniversary rolls around every year. That was the Papoose myth. That was the Papoose brand. And Papoose sold that brand for 2 decades, in interviews, on records, in freestyles, in documentaries, in every corner of the media where a black love story could be traded for cultural currency. That myth is worth millions in perceived integrity, and Papoose knew it. Papoose banked on it. Papoose lived off of it long after his rap career stopped charting. But then Claressa Shields happened. Or rather, according to Claressa Shields herself, according to the timeline the culture is now piecing together, Claressa Shields had already been happening for a very long time. Rewind to the very first confirmation. When the Papoose and Claressa story leaked, Claressa Shields did not deny it. Claressa Shields did the opposite. Claressa Shields posted. Claressa Shields hard-launched. Claressa Shields responded to social media in a tone that effectively confirmed that whatever her situation with Papoose was, it was not a fresh thing. It was not a rebound. It was not a random. It was a whole arrangement that had been building underneath the marriage while Remy Ma was still in the house, still on stage, still holding the family together. The block clocked it immediately. The comment sections clocked it. The bloggers clocked it. The blue-check hip-hop journalists clocked it. And most importantly, Remy Ma clocked it. Because Remy Ma has now dropped a track called WYFL, and the entire hip-hop internet decoded it in real time as a direct Scud missile at Papoose and Claressa Shields, complete with layered double entendres that only somebody with insider access to the timeline could have written. Now listen, this is where the Papoose narrative starts to fall apart under its own weight. Papoose went on that live stream and cried about being stabbed in the back. Papoose said Remy Ma cheated on him multiple times. Papoose swore he was the loyal one, the wronged one, the innocent one. Papoose said his back had knife marks and his soul had bruises. But Papoose could not name a single day, a single incident, a single receipt. Papoose gave the culture 2 full hours of monologue and 0 minutes of evidence. What Papoose could do, though, was suddenly appear at award shows next to Claressa Shields wearing matching outfits. What Papoose could do was walk red carpets with Claressa Shields 6 months into a marital separation as if the ink on the paperwork was already dry. What Papoose could do was let Claressa Shields buy him what Papoose himself described on that couch as a whole pack of fitted hats. Boo! Nobody buys a grown man a pack of fitted hats out of nowhere. Fitted caps do not come in packs. They come one at a time, one size, one color, one team. If a woman is buying you a pack, that means the woman knows your size, your rotation, your team allegiance, and your personal style. That's not a first date. That's not a second date. That's not a third date. That's a woman deep in a rotation, and a man deep enough in that rotation to accept a bulk gift without asking a single question about where it came from. Come to find out, according to voices deep in the hip-hop commentary space, Papoose and Claressa Shields were allegedly linked as far back as when Remy Ma was still hosting shows, still headlining, still building. Papoose was allegedly texting, allegedly traveling, allegedly showing up at Claressa Shields' fights, allegedly slipping into venues under the radar, while dressed at home like the loving husband who never missed a Sunday dinner. And the sinister part, the part that has the culture actually turning on Papoose rather than politely disengaging, is that Papoose weaponized his own reputation to cover the affair. Papoose spent 20 years telling us he was the one man in hip-hop who didn't play with his wife. Papoose let the culture canonize him as a walking, breathing, rhyming symbol of black love. And then Papoose allegedly used every single ounce of that canonization as cover to run a parallel life. The myth wasn't a byproduct. The myth was the alibi. Real talk, sugar, that's not a heartbreak story. That's a heist. And Papoose is the getaway driver trying to convince the police he was just at the wrong intersection at the wrong time. Matter of fact, let's take it back to that live stream, because Big Keys was right about one thing. That couch confession is the Zapruder film of this entire situation. Play it in slow motion, and you catch a new detail every time. Papoose sat down and said, and I'm paraphrasing the spirit of it, that Remy Ma had been cheating on him multiple times before the incident that finally made him snap and drive to the venue. Papoose said Remy Ma had cheated with the man Papoose ended up confronting. Papoose framed himself as the last one to know, the shocked husband who couldn't believe his eyes. But Papoose then, in the very same monologue, admitted Papoose knew for years. Boo! If you knew your wife was cheating for years and you stayed, you were not the wronged husband. You were a partner in a mutual arrangement. Because a real ride or die who has been betrayed multiple times either leaves quietly with dignity or has a documented, dated pattern of trying to fix it. Papoose has neither. Papoose has a couch, a microphone, a phone that mysteriously muted itself when Papoose tried to double down on a specific lie, and a brand new girlfriend who was allegedly already in the wings when the snap moment happened. The block noticed, sis. The block noticed everything. The block does not forget. Small thing, but important. Remember when Papoose swore on that same live stream that Papoose had been keeping quiet the entire time out of respect for the marriage and out of respect for the children? Papoose said Papoose was not the type of man to come to social media. Papoose said Papoose spoke with actions, not words. Papoose said this in his opening remarks like a State of the Union address. And then Papoose proceeded to speak for over an hour. Name Remy Ma by name repeatedly. Allege infidelity in graphic terms. Allege neglect. Allege financial abandonment. Allege a job status that Papoose himself couldn't even finish describing without laughing at his own executive title claim. And drag his daughter into the middle of a public custody argument that had absolutely no business being conducted on Instagram Live. That's not restraint. That's not respect. That's a demolition disguised as a defense. That's a man torching his own house and calling it a housekeeping update. And every commentator worth their salt, Big Keys, the Keys News Network, the entire Bronx to Brooklyn commentary corridor, the Atlanta reactors, the LA gossip channels, half the barbershops in New York, has been dissecting it beat by beat ever since Papoose closed that live stream and put his phone down thinking he'd won. Meanwhile, Remy Ma has said almost nothing publicly. Let that sit for a second. Let it marinate. The woman who was allegedly cheating, allegedly withholding the child, allegedly draining Papoose emotionally, allegedly the source of every bad thing that ever happened to Papoose, has stayed damn near silent through the entire public execution of her marriage. Remy Ma hasn't gone live. Remy Ma hasn't done a sit-down. Remy Ma hasn't cried on any couch. The only real response Remy Ma has given is on wax, because Remy Ma is an artist, and artists speak in bars. And when Remy Ma finally opened her mouth on WYFL, Remy Ma didn't come at Claressa Shields with insults or come at Papoose with playground shots. Remy Ma came with cadence, with pin game, and with the kind of quiet devastation that only somebody who's been in the room the entire time can deliver. And that alone, the sheer restraint of it, tells you which one of them actually knows the real receipts, and which one of them is bluffing on national livestream. Now here is where the Claressa Shields piece of this Papoose situation gets really interesting. Because Claressa Shields is not a random. Claressa Shields is not some Instagram model who wandered into a rapper's DMs. Claressa Shields is a two-time Olympic gold medalist, a multi-division undisputed boxing world champion, a woman who has climbed her way to the top of arguably the hardest sport on earth without a soft landing pad anywhere on the way. Claressa Shields does not need a man for shine. Claressa Shields does not need Papoose for money. Claressa Shields does not need Papoose for validation. So the question the culture keeps asking, the question every serious gossip commentator keeps circling back to, is, what is Claressa Shields actually doing with Papoose? What does Papoose offer Claressa Shields that Claressa Shields cannot buy, build, or box her way into on her own? What is the actual value proposition of the Papoose merger? Some in the commentary community are alleging that Claressa Shields wanted Papoose specifically because Papoose came pre-attached to a hip-hop legacy that boxing alone could never have unlocked for her. That the Claressa Shields brand, historically boxing only, historically underexposed by the mainstream celebrity press, historically ignored by the very black media outlets that celebrate every male athlete of half her accomplishment, got a massive culture crossover the second Papoose became her +1 on the red carpet. Suddenly Claressa Shields is on the Shade Room. Suddenly Claressa Shields is trending on X. Suddenly Claressa Shields is being covered by outlets that never once covered a middleweight title fight. And on the other side of that trade, Papoose, who had been slowly drifting off the culture radar for years, whose album drops barely registered, whose freestyles hadn't gone viral in half a decade, is suddenly relevant again. Papoose is back on red carpets. Papoose is back in the algorithm. Papoose is back in the mix. So one theory floating around, and it's a theory the culture is warming to fast, is that Papoose and Claressa Shields aren't a romance at all. They're a merger, a mutually beneficial visibility trade dressed up as a love story. And Remy Ma is the collateral damage the merger accountants decided the balance sheet could afford. Peep this though, it gets worse. Because there's a third layer. Because the block is also saying that when Claressa Shields initially came out and shut down the very first Papoose and Remy Ma Christmas rumors, that whole "you are misinformed" statement Claressa Shields gave that complex covered. Claressa Shields was not just defending Papoose. Claressa Shields was allegedly protecting a timeline. Claressa Shields allegedly needed the public to believe that Papoose was already single before Claressa Shields and Papoose became a thing. Because if the culture ever figured out that Papoose was still legally married and physically present in Remy Ma's home when the Claressa Shields relationship began, Chile, the whole underdog Olympic sweetheart narrative Claressa Shields has been building for over a decade, would crack straight down the middle. The Wheaties box would come off the shelf. The endorsement deals would go quiet. The whole little girl from Flint who fought her way to gold story would suddenly have an asterisk. Claressa Shields cannot afford that asterisk. So Claressa Shields did what a woman with everything to lose does. Claressa Shields moved to lock the timeline in cement before anybody had a chance to check the math. And that's the part Papoose doesn't want you to focus on. That's the part that keeps getting buried under the noise of every new couch live stream, every new red carpet appearance, every new "we outside" post from Papoose and Claressa Shields at the 2026 BET Awards. Papoose is banking on the culture having short memory. Papoose is banking on the noise drowning out the receipts. Papoose is banking on Big Keys eventually running out of episodes. Papoose is banking on Remy Ma being too dignified to fight in public. But the receipts don't disappear just because Papoose gets loud. The receipts sit exactly where the receipts have been sitting the entire time, in DMs, in call logs, in venue security footage, in the memories of everybody who was around during the alleged overlap period. Now listen, let's talk about the child. Because this is where the Papoose situation genuinely turns dark, and this is the part one need everybody watching to actually sit with for a second. Papoose sat on that live stream and used his own daughter as a rhetorical shield. Papoose said, and this is close to verbatim, that Remy Ma weaponized their daughter, refused visits, prevented pickups, and generally acted like a miserable individual toward the child. Papoose framed himself as the concerned father being kept from his own flesh and blood by a bitter, vindictive ex. It was Oscar clip material. It was the emotional peak of the live stream. It was designed to make the audience furious on Papoose's behalf. But Papoose also, in the very same breath, on the very same live stream, without any apparent awareness of the contradiction, admitted that a woman named Diamond was the primary person picking his daughter up from school. Not Remy Ma. Not Papoose himself. Diamond. A third-party caretaker Papoose named on air. So which is it, Papoose? Is Remy Ma preventing you from seeing your daughter? Or is a third-party caretaker handling the school pickups the entire time while Remy Ma is out working? Because those two stories cannot both be true. And the fact that Papoose contradicted himself on the same live stream within literal minutes tells you everything you need to know about how much of that monologue was scripted and how much was improvised on the fly with Papoose praying his own memory could keep up. The block is saying Papoose panicked. Papoose thought Instagram Live would let Papoose control the story. Instead, Instagram Live gave the culture a 2-hour recording of Papoose slowly and publicly incriminating himself, one contradiction at a time, one deleted detail at a time, one phone muted itself moment at a time. The live stream that was supposed to save Papoose's reputation is now Exhibit A in the culture's case against him. And that is why Big Key's Papoose File series is exploding right now over at Keys News Network. Because Big Keys isn't inventing anything. Big Keys is just replaying Papoose's own words back to Papoose and letting Papoose's own contradictions do the damage. Every episode Big Keys drops is another beat in the same rhythm. Papoose said this, but Papoose also said that, and both of those things cannot be true at the same time. So which lie do you want us to believe, Papoose? And the audience is eating it up because the audience has been screaming this exact analysis in comment sections for months. Big Keys didn't invent the argument. Big Keys just gave the argument a platform, a series title, and a beat-by-beat breakdown structure the culture could actually digest. Chile, please. But hold on. There's another layer to this Papoose situation the culture is still sleeping on, and it might be the biggest layer of them all. Because remember when Papoose claimed on that live stream that Papoose had personally written 90% of every rhyme Remy Ma ever released? Papoose said the rhymes were in Papoose's head first, then in Papoose's email drafts, then in Papoose's phone, then in Remy Ma's phone. Papoose gave the culture a whole technical walkthrough of the ghostwriting workflow like Papoose was demoing an app at Apple's keynote. Papoose said fans always suspected Papoose was Remy Ma's ghostwriter and Papoose never confirmed it out of respect. But now Papoose wanted to set the record straight. Papoose said Papoose was the pen behind the throne. And the entire hip-hop community, from Fat Joe's camp to Meek Mill's camp to every serious hip-hop journalist covering the situation, from Hip Hop DX to Complex to XXL to the podcast circuit, looked at that claim and asked one simple, devastating question. Papoose, where's your hit? Because if Papoose really wrote 90% of Remy Ma's discography, including the verses that carried Remy Ma to legendary status, then Papoose, under Papoose's own name, with Papoose's own beats, with Papoose's own promo budget, with a whole record label pushing Papoose in the mid-2000s when Papoose was widely considered the next big Brooklyn signing, should have at bare minimum one iconic solo hit. Papoose does not. Papoose has never had one. In 2 decades of trying, in dozens of album drops, in hundreds of mixtapes, Papoose has never landed the record. So either Papoose is lying about the 90%, or Papoose has been simultaneously the most talented ghostwriter and the most inefficient soloist in the entire history of hip-hop. Both cannot be true. Real talk. You can't have it both ways, Papoose. But this is what the Papoose playbook keeps doing. Every time Papoose gets cornered on one accusation, Papoose pivots to a bigger accusation. Cornered on the cheating? Pivot to the child. Cornered on the child? Pivot to the finances. Cornered on the finances? Pivot to the ghostwriting. Cornered on the ghostwriting? Pivot back to the she's miserable narrative. Papoose is not defending himself. Papoose is running a full-court press of distraction, hoping the sheer volume of accusations against Remy Ma drowns out the singular reality that Papoose was allegedly with Claressa Shields the entire time. Papoose is a magician. Papoose is doing sleight of hand. Papoose is asking you to look at the left pocket so Papoose can slip Claressa Shields out of the right pocket. And here's the part that should genuinely terrify Papoose, and the part one want everybody in the comments to pay attention to. Because the culture, the actual black culture, the hip-hop culture, the ride-or-die culture Papoose spent 20 years positioning himself as the mascot of, has already decided. And once the culture decides, sugar, No couch live stream, and no red carpet debut, and no matching outfits is going to reverse it. You can see it in the comments sections under every Big Keys episode. You can see it in the streaming numbers for Remy Ma's WYFL, doing the exact opposite of what Papoose thought would happen. You can see it in the way every hip-hop podcast that mentions Papoose right now spends 30 seconds explaining the situation and the rest of the segment openly laughing at Papoose's choices. Papoose is a punchline now. Papoose used to be a symbol. Papoose is now a joke that opens the show. Papoose lost the culture. And Papoose lost the culture in slow motion, in real time, on his own live stream, in his own words, on his own devices, from his own mouth. Small thing, boo. But you have to understand the historical context here, because this Papoose situation isn't happening in a vacuum. Remy Ma is not just any woman. Remy Ma is not just Papoose's wife. Remy Ma is one of the most respected female MCs to ever pick up a microphone in the history of the culture. Remy Ma survived a prison bid that would have ended most careers 3 times over. Remy Ma came home in 2014 and immediately reclaimed her spot in the culture without missing a step. Remy Ma won BET Cyphers. Remy Ma out-rapped legends. Remy Ma survived a Nicki Minaj-era conflict that would have folded most artists. Remy Ma has had the co-sign of every generation of hip-hop from Fat Joe to Papoose himself to Meek Mill to the current wave of Bronx-anchored talent. So when Papoose stood on that couch and tried to publicly humiliate Remy Ma, Papoose wasn't just insulting his wife. Papoose was picking a fight with an entire era of the culture. Papoose was throwing hands at Fat Joe by proxy. Papoose was disrespecting the Terror Squad legacy. Papoose was signaling to every legend who ever co-signed Remy Ma that Papoose thought he could rewrite the story alone. In the culture, Fat Joe subtly, Meek Mill subtly, the New York blogosphere loudly, the Atlanta reactors loudly, the podcast circuit loudly, has quietly closed ranks around Remy Ma without needing to say a public word about it. Meanwhile, Claressa Shields is discovering the same thing every civilian who dates into hip-hop discovers eventually. The fandom is not the friend of the outsider. Claressa Shields might be an Olympic legend in the boxing world, but in the hip-hop world, Claressa Shields is a guest, and the hosts are not happy. Every time Claressa Shields posts a soft launch photo with Papoose, the comment sections light up with variations of the same message. This is not a win. This is a warning. Because the culture remembers Remy Ma. The culture remembers the jail wedding. The culture remembers the daily visitation. The culture remembers the Queen is home. Welcome campaign Papoose himself orchestrated. And now the culture is watching Papoose try to speed-run the erasure of that entire mythology with a boxer Papoose barely knew 12 months ago. It is not going to work. Nothing about the math works. Chile, the receipts on this Papoose situation are relentless. And they keep multiplying. Come to find out, there's also a financial subplot to the Papoose situation that the mainstream coverage keeps missing. Because when Papoose sat on that couch and started ranting about the utilities being in Papoose's name, Papoose accidentally revealed something the culture immediately caught, tagged, and dragged. Papoose bragged that Papoose paid the utility bills. Not the mortgage. Not the property taxes. Not the tuition. Not the household insurance. Not the car notes. Not the security system. The utilities. Meaning the light bill, the gas, and maybe the water. Everybody who understands household finance understood immediately what that meant. Remy Ma was carrying the actual house. Remy Ma was carrying the mortgage. Remy Ma was carrying the education. Papoose was covering a couple $100s a month in flashlight and thermostat money. And Papoose thought that was a flex. Papoose thought bragging about the utility bill on a national live stream was going to make Papoose look like the provider of the household. Instead, Papoose gave the entire internet a confession-shaped receipt confirming everything Remy Ma has been silently letting the world figure out on its own. Papoose confessed to being financially subordinate on a live stream Papoose staged to prove he was in charge. Because here's the deeper truth, sis. The reason Papoose is running so loud right now, the reason Papoose is doing live streams, red carpets, interviews, everything short of a Netflix docuseries, is because Papoose knows the second the culture stops arguing about who cheated first, the culture is going to start asking the real question. Who actually built what in the Papoose and Remy Ma partnership? Whose career carried whose bank account? Whose name kept the lights on? And once that question gets asked out loud on the biggest platforms, Papoose has a serious problem. Because Remy Ma has the discography. Remy Ma has the awards. Remy Ma has the streaming numbers. Remy Ma has the cosigns. Remy Ma has the touring receipts. Papoose has a couch, a claim, and a girlfriend nobody's sure is going to stick around long enough to see the end of the news cycle. Now hold on, plot twist. Because just when you thought the Papoose situation couldn't get more layered, There's a rumor circulating in the hip-hop commentary community that Claressa Shields herself is starting to see the cracks in the Papoose story. Sources are alleging that Claressa Shields has been quietly asking around about Papoose's past behavior, about the incident at the venue where Papoose confronted Remy Ma's alleged side piece, about the timeline of the ghostwriting claims, about why Papoose's own daughter reportedly does not want to spend extended time with Papoose during the visits Claressa Shields has hosted, about why Papoose's stories keep changing every time a new interviewer asks the same question. And when a woman like Claressa Shields, a woman who has spent her entire career reading opponents before they even throw the first punch, a woman whose whole professional edge is pattern recognition under pressure, starts quietly asking around about her own man, that man's clock is already ticking. Claressa Shields is not going to be the last woman to figure out what Remy Ma already knows. Because Claressa Shields did not become Claressa Shields by staying in losing corners. Claressa Shields' entire career is built on knowing exactly when to pivot, when to change stance, when to abandon a strategy that isn't working before the strategy costs Claressa Shields a title. And if the streets are right about what Claressa Shields is currently investigating on her own, Papoose is one bad news cycle away from being the shortest chapter in the Claressa Shields autobiography. Phew. But here's the meta question the culture cannot stop debating. Boo.